I think when it comes down to what are the things that Islam needs to look out for and what does he need to make sure that he does in order to guarantee victory here is... What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
So, Nick, Islam Makhachev, 3-1 favorite over Alexander Volkanovski. It looks like this could be a business-as-usual type of performance, but what in your mind does Islam need to do to guarantee victory here?
Well, he does have to stick to his game plan, and we know these Dagestani fighters definitely know how to do that. They have a great plan, a great leader in Khabib, and every time they go out there, they're usually getting their hand raised. I mean, I think Khabib's record with all of his team over the past couple of years since he retired was like 65-0 or 65-1, something ridiculous like that. It made sense for us that we had to do a Keys to Victory for Islam video, just like we did last week, Keys to Victory for Volkanovski. And I think it's a little bit easier to make the case for Islam. Obviously, he does pretty much the same thing every time, rinse and repeat. He's going to go out there, pressure you with really good striking, and in my opinion, underrated striking, get you close to the cage, close the distance, put you on the ground, and then either leave with a submission or a ground and pound victory or just a total mauling from start to finish. And I kind of see how this would wind up playing out exactly the same way, but Volkanovski is a tough dude. So I think Islam Makhachev does have a more difficult fight on his hand than appears on paper.
Absolutely. I think you're correct. I mean, Alexander Volkanovski, after all, is the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world as it sits right now, and he's very good. He's very good everywhere. He's good on the feet. He's good in the clinch. He's good on the ground. He's very crafty, and he knows how to win rounds. But I think when it comes down to what are the things that Islam needs to look out for and what does he need to make sure that he does in order to guarantee victory here is going to be a couple of things. The first thing being check the leg kicks. Alexander Volkanovski is very good at lateral movements, and he's very good at whipping these inside and outside leg kicks. He hits the calf well. He hits the quad well. And one thing when you're a wrestler who takes people down, that's kind of the basis of Islam's game. The way to slow that down is to chop the legs and hurt them, because the legs are what drives the takedown. So if you can slow the legs down, you can see the takedowns coming. They're more labored and they're harder for the opponent who's trying to take you down to actually land those shots. So I think first thing, he's got to make sure that he checks the leg kicks well and then answers with something immediately, whether it be punches or kicks of his own. The second thing I think he's going to have to do, and he's very good at doing this, is not allowing himself to get emotional in the cage. Alexander Volkanovski throws a lot of shots. He's got great cardio, and I do expect Volkanovski to win some of the striking exchanges. But what Islam has to not do is bite down on his mouthpiece and try to get back the shots that Volk just landed, so to speak. He's got to, as you said, stick to his game plan, stay very disciplined, hands up, straight punches down the middle, and look for his shots. Now, it may get to the situation where the crowd starts to boo, right? Because this fight is going to take place in Australia. This is Volkanovski's backyard. The crowd is going to be a very pro-Volk crowd. This is history trying to be made here. He's going for champ status. I think if he becomes champ, he will have done it in the most difficult fashion of anybody that's ever done it in the UFC. So Volk's going to have a lot of momentum riding behind him from the crowd. And Islam has to stay disciplined. He has to make sure that if he starts to get booed because there's not a lot of action in the first round, because he's trying to read what Volk does and get his timing, that he stays right on course, believes in what he trained to do, and does it at the right time and picks his shots and his takedowns very carefully.
For sure. Team Khabib says it all the time, and they love to take fighters into deep waters and essentially drown them. That's what they mean by when they say that. But one thing I was kind of looking at in his most recent fights, you know, when he's fighting Charles Oliveira and basically his late rise to the top, was that they were sort of putting a sense of urgency on his fighting. You know, they want to get these finishes. And if they're coming by submission, that's totally fine. But it felt for a while like people were like, oh, the Dagestani guys are good, but they're just going to hold you down and beat you up. And to a casual's eye, that's probably what you see. But there's so much going on. There's so much technique when it comes to their ground and pound game and what they do that's just very sophisticated, very difficult to do. And it does lead to a somewhat boring style if that's not what you're into, but at the same time, it's very, very effective. And I think that if Islam is able to, quote unquote, carry him into deep waters, that could either work out for him or be to his detriment. Because one thing you have to look at when you're looking at these two guys' resumes is one of them has a lot more experience in 5-round fights than the other. And that actually sways in the favor of Volkanovski. You know, he's been in there 3 times with Max Holloway. He's been the champ for much longer than Islam has. and he has a gas tank on him like nobody's ever seen. Islam hasn't had to show us a crazy gas tank as of yet. You know, he's just now getting into the 5-round club, and he hasn't really had to make it all the way into the finishing championship rounds. But if he does start to show a little bit of tiredness, if he does start to show that his gas tank weathers a little bit as the fight goes on, that could be the time for Volkanovski to press the gas and really try to push forward and fight and defend on takedowns. And he might even start blocking and defending some takedowns and make Islam miss. And then it's turning into a striking match where Islam wasn't really expecting himself to be. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Islam come out with a sense of urgency, trying to get this thing done, not only for the sake that he doesn't have the 5-round experience that Volkanovski has, but also because they are trying to get these first-round finishes, second-round finishes, and just really beat these guys and make it seem like they're in a completely different league. But his keys to victory are certainly more attainable and seem easier to complete than what Volkanovski has to do to get his hand raised.
I would agree. The path to the victory here for Islam is easier than that of Volkanovski's. I believe Volkanovski's is much more narrow. He needs to win a perfect points fight, and I think Islam can afford to give up round 1, round 2. Round 3 is kind of when that sense of urgency. If he does drop the first 2, you may see Islam pick up the pace just a little bit. But I think given the fact that Brian Ortega had Volkanovski in multiple submissions, that if it weren't for just pure heart and determination, would have finished the fight. Those types of things with Islam Makhachev on top of you, pure heart and determination will not get you out of those. So I think he has the luxury of reading the first couple of rounds and even conceding them if need be. So for that reason, I think that his path is much greater than that of Volkanovski's.
I agree. And Volkanovski's been spending a lot of time this camp in Thailand, which, you know, is a great place to go if you're into striking and if you need to work on your striking. But Volkanovski's striking is really, really good already. If I were him, I probably would have flown out to Oklahoma or Penn State and gone into a wrestling room at one of the elite D1 colleges in the country. But I guess he's going with a different plan. They've got some great wrestling down there in Thailand. Yeah, I think the Hickman brothers are the ones sort of leading the way down there. So I'm interested in seeing what kind of game plan Volkanovski comes in with. We know what Islam's going to bring into the cage, and I think he's going to do it and try to get it done in either the first or second round. Like you said, his keys to victory are probably a little bit more attainable and easier to reach than Volkanovski's. But I do think we have a hell of a fight on our hands, and I do think this fight's going to be a lot more competitive than people are making it out to be.
Agreed. Thanks for watching this video, guys. We're your hub for all things combat sports. If that's your jam, we appreciate a subscribe and a like on the video, and drop us a comment down below. We'll see you next time.
Peace.